Hello and greetings from the U.S. Embassy in Buenos Aires. Our embassy community would like to invite you to join with us in a community service project we are conducting throughout Argentina. We learned about this project from our two binational centers in Santa Fe and Rosario. At those centers, the students are creating blankets by knitting individual squares, which we are going to form together to help keep Argentina warm throughout this winter season. We would now like to invite the other binational centers and you at home as well to join with us in this important project. In order for us to be able to use everyone's squares, we've had to set some specifications to keep the squares uniform. We will be asking for squares that are 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters or roughly 8 inches by 8 inches. If you visit our embassy webpage, you'll be able to find instructions for knitting such a square on the page. But right now, I'd like to show you a demonstration of how you would begin, knit a bit of your square, and then bind off your square. What I'd like to do now is show you how to begin your knitting. So you would start by forming a very basic slip knot over your needle, just a basic slip. Then, in order to bring stitches onto the needle, you would insert your second needle into the back of that loop. Wrap the yarn around, drop it through between the needles, pull the loop through, and then drop it on top of the needle. That's another stitch made. I have 2 stitches. Again, put the needle through to the back, draw the yarn in between the needles, pull the yarn down through the loop, and then add that loop to your knitting. So continue knitting your square, every row a knit row, until you get a piece that is forming into a rectangle. I will just demonstrate going across. Again, simple knitting. Something you can do while you're watching television, reading a book, and all the while remembering that you'll be contributing to helping to keep people warm throughout the winter. Once your square measures the correct length, it's now time to put an edge on the square and bind it off. Let me show you how to do that. So again, you would start just as if you were going to knit another row. You make your first stitch and then a second stitch. Now what we want to do is to close off those stitches. So I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to insert it into the first stitch and carry that stitch over the second stitch. I've now bound off that stitch. Again, I go into the next stitch as if I were to knit it just like a regular stitch, pull that stitch off of the needle, and then simply take the second stitch that's behind it and cross it over. And in that way, I work across the top and I end up with a nice edge on the end of my square. Once you've finished binding off, you'll end up with a square that looks roughly like this. What we will then do is collect the squares that you send to us and join them together to fashion the blankets. We want to thank you very much for your participation in this project. And again, I encourage you to look at our website for details about how to knit your squares and where you should send them. Thank you for helping us to keep Argentina warm this winter.